Alright, here's what you do. First step, you don't care about the outcome. I don't care if this shatters on my first craft at 94%. I don't care when it shatters, or if it does. This item means nothing to me. That's the first step. Step 2, you don't look at it. Don't look at it while you're crafting it. Step 3, you click very fast. Here we go. This is how you craft. Am I wrong? General crafting guide. All right, let's see. General crafting guide. Okay. So, you plug your item in that you want to craft on. You have 2 prefixes. You have 2 suffixes. All of the shards you pick up, like all the little shards you pick up, you can just hit transfer crafting materials. It puts it all into your forge. Okay. So, strategy. You can see the tier that it is. Tier 1 goes from tier 1 to tier 5 in crafting. Tier 6 and tier 7s can drop the purple items you might find, like this one. The tier 6 and tier 7 can only be dropped. You can craft up to a tier 5. Crafting strategy. You have a lot of control over what stats go on the item you want. You can like click this little plus button and look through like your prefixes, suffixes. For me, on this character, for example, I want poison res on rings. You type in poison res, you see I have 161 shards. You click it, and it's ready to craft. You see I have a 100% upgrade chance. If I were to just click upgrade, that puts the poison res on. But there's a little bit more strategy that can go into crafting that helps you craft better items, and that's using the glyphs. Glyph of Stability gives you a chance when you upgrade it to add only 2 to 5 instability. And basically, if you hold Control Alt over the item, it shows your instability. You'll see at the top here, under the name of the ring, it says instability 0. The more unstable an item becomes, the more likely it is to fracture. And so the goal is to use Glyph of Stability for the chance at making it less unstable. Because the less unstable it is, the more stats you can put on. So, I could use nothing here, and I have a 100% chance. Or, the ideal way to do it is use Glyph of Stability. I still have a 100% chance, but it's likely to be less unstable, which means in the long term I can put more stats on it. So that's what I'm going to do. You put 1 stat on. Poison res, that's what I need for my rings. And now it's a 92% chance. You'll see by putting that shard on, the instability is 3. So basically that's what causes your success chance to go down. A big part of crafting is finding a level that you're comfortable with using stability glyphs down to. So, like I was saying earlier, there's a lot of like superstition that goes into it. For me, I feel comfortable usually using stability down to an 80%. Unless it's an item that I know I need to get a lot of stats on to be good, then sometimes I'll greed a little bit and I'll go down to like maybe a 75 at the lowest with stability. So please don't fracture here. We'll do this again. The item is at 6 instability right now. There's the fracture. So to stop the fractures, let's throw another item in here. Poor timing on that. Let's throw another item in here. Do poison res again, same thing. This one starts at 92% chance because the item's already unstable. It has a tier 5 on it and a tier 3. So the item is naturally just a little bit more unstable. We'll throw a couple more shards on here. Well, look at that, see? So, yeah, it goes up to a tier 5. The higher the tier, the better the stat rolls. So, if you look, for example, on this ring, the elemental resistance is tier 6 or 16% to 20. That's the tier 5. Like I said, I need poison res on here. So we went over the stability glyph. Once you get your upgrade percent chance down to a certain amount, you've been using stability glyphs to try to make the item overall less unstable. At that point, you would switch over to Glyph of the Guardian, which gives you it reduces some of the chance for the item to fracture. So by switching to a Guardian now, we go from 80 to 100%, and that is so you can like lock in the next couple of tiers for sure. So I go from an 80 with stability. I want more poison res on this, so I switch to a Glyph of the Guardian, and then it's basically guaranteed there. Put a couple more on those. And as you craft, you'll see at the bottom, you have an 83% chance to fracture, or to upgrade here. At the bottom, it tells you what fractures you can get. And basically, the minor fracture breaks the item, like I did. You can't craft on it anymore, but that's that. That's a minor fracture. Damaging fracture has a chance to remove some of the tiers off the item if you break it. So if it's an item you really need to switch into and you can't risk losing some of the stats, say my build to get elemental res capped, say that I really need this to be tier 5. I can't risk this dropping below or my character's not capped. I would never take a risk on a damaging fracture because there's always a chance that this could get reduced down below a tier 5. Prefixes you can't change, those are default. No, it's just it just worked out that the items that I've gambled have 2 prefixes on them already. Like here's an example. Here's a ring. This has an open prefix and an open suffix. So yeah, anything that's not on the item already, you can control. So that's glyphs. We can go over runes next. Shattering rune is pretty important for getting materials to craft with. Say you're a build that really wants attack speed, or let's see what's on this. Say you're a build that really needs melee crit on your weapon. You can set your loot filter up to highlight any item with like a certain number of tiers. What I'll usually do for fracturing is like a tier 3 or higher. And you'll be running and you'll see this picked up by your loot filter. And what you would want to do is use a Rune of Shattering, and it gives you a chance to get any of these shards back off the item. So I could potentially get 6 chance to shock on hit shards back, 4 chance to chill, 5 melee physical damage, or 2 melee crit. And so we shatter it, and you'll see that's all the materials I get back from the item. The Runes of Shattering are pretty expensive. You can buy more from the vendor in End of Time. She sells them for 2,000 gold each. You kind of want to be a little bit choosy about what you're shattering. You don't want to run around and shatter a bunch of tier 1 items, because at the best you're only going to get 1 shard back. And that's why I set a filter to show usually tier 3 or higher, because you get the most. You have a, potentially can get more shards back. Let's look at this ring again with the 1 prefix and the 1 suffix. There's another rune called Rune of Removal, and it has a chance to remove any of the affixes off. So if it has 4 stats or 3 stats, if I use Rune of Removal, it's going to get rid of one of these. There's a gamble here. But a good Rune of Removal can set your item up to be really good. Say you have 3 really good stats and then some 4th one that you don't want. If you can remove that and craft a stat that you do want, you have a really good item. So maybe say for this ring, it's very important that I have 2 suffixes open because I want like flat health and some other kind of resist. I could use Rune of Removal here, which also works with Glyph of Stability to make it less unstable. And you can try to remove a stat. In this case, it removes the prefix. So shatter prefixes, suffixes you want, yeah, for farming. That helps you build a good supply of materials you might need. One I like to shatter a lot is Hybrid Health, which I have none of. I need to set up a shatter filter for that. That's Shattering Rune, Rune of Removal. Another good one is this Rune of Cleansing. Rune of Cleansing removes all stats from the item, except for the implicit. And that's really good for when you find an item with a really high implicit. So something like 7% move speed ring. It's got 7% out of 3 to 8 is the range. It could possibly be 8. Move speed is not too important, but something like it's something like a gold ring. It can roll 5 to 18% elemental resistance. Say you find this out in the wild with 18% on the implicit. That's 18% free elemental resist you get. And maybe all the stats on it are not good for you. You can cleanse it. Also works with stability glyph. Removes everything. Now you have a high base implicit roll on the item you want. That's Rune of Cleansing. It's really good for weapons that roll high, like a staff with really high adaptive spell damage, but all the stats aren't great for you. The adaptive spell damage immediately helps your skills do a lot more damage. That's something you might cleanse. Something like this ring, if it were to roll high on elemental resist, that's another option to cleanse. That's Cleansing Rune. Next is Rune of Refinement. Rune of Refinement re-rolls the tiers the tier range. So say this lightning res, it can roll from 30 to 45. Say this was a 30% low roll on the lightning res, and my build needs 35% to get capped. That's really important to me, so I would use Rune of Refinement, and you can re-roll. It re-rolls the range on every single stat on it. So Rune of Refinement, you'll see we re-roll it, and it takes the 44 to a 41. If I needed more, though, the Rune of Refinement could be really good. And just to clarify, too, the Rune of Refinement, when you use it, it skews the rolls toward the middle of the range. So it's going to be pretty impossible. If this was a 30% lightning res and I use Rune of Refinement, it's going to be pretty impossible to get 45%, the max roll. But it's pretty likely that it'll bump it up to like mid-30s to 40s because it skews it toward the middle of the range. That's Rune of Refinement. And then finally, Rune of, what's this called? Rune of Shaping. This re-rolls the implicit. So Rune of Refinement rolls the tiers. Rune of Shaping re-rolls the implicit. So this move speed ring's a 5%. Maybe I want to try to get it closer to a max roll, which would be an 8. You can use this, and that changes the implicit. That's the runes. That's basically crafting. The best times to craft, definitely in campaign. Weapons are really important. So while I'm leveling, this is what I'll do. Say you're a build that's using like a two-handed staff. Every time I reach one of these level breakpoints, like level 5, level 12, level 18, if the adaptive spell damage is higher, I'll go try to gamble this, and maybe I'll craft on it a little bit. That would be in campaign when crafting's important. Another time in campaign when crafting's important is if you're getting destroyed by a certain boss. A good example of this is Admiral Harton. Admiral Harton in Chapter 2, or Imperial Era, I mean, that's doing a lot of necrotic and lightning res. You can find an item with like a decent base, and you'll just throw like lightning res or necrotic on so you can get through that boss and move on. Or like Ruined Era, there's a lot of void enemies. Void res is pretty good to have in that. I generally don't craft too much in campaign other than weapon, unless my build is getting destroyed. Unless my build's getting destroyed, then I'll craft. In general, I try to hold on to shards for as long as possible, so I just have a more wealth of materials when I get to end game. You have a lot more flexibility. You can craft on like higher level bases. A good example of that would be, let's say I'm playing a Sentinel and I have this plus 30 armor helmet. I could throw all of my flat health onto this item at level 1, or if I can survive, I can wait until later on when maybe I get something like plus 70 armor helmet with increased void damage. That would be a better candidate for an item that I would want to invest a lot of materials into. So in general, crafting on weapons in campaign's good. Crafting on items, you can if you want to. Ideally, you want to save your points for as long as you can, or your shards, for an item more worth dumping materials into. Once you hit endgame, crafting becomes a lot more big of a deal. You're going to want to look for items with like 1 to 2 high roll stats. So once you get to endgame, you want to look for items with like tier 5s of a couple stats you want, and because they're going to be naturally less unstable, and then that's an item you kind of want to put some resources into. And basically, you're slowly replacing the weakest items of your build, like over time. Say you have like a really weak amulet, you want to try to replace that. You need like a stepping stone item, like something that's immediately better than what you're wearing from campaign, but something that can get you through endgame for long enough to farm for a better base to replace that with. I think that's that. That's about all I think I can talk about on crafting. Crafting in hardcore is a lot more important too. Like you don't want to risk dying in campaign and hardcore. So you probably craft a little bit more often. Like flat health is a good stat. Whatever resistance for the zone you're in, so like void damage, void resistance, and something like Ruined Air is all void. Imperial's a lot of necrotic. You run into like a lot of poison, fire also, more necrotic, poison, physical. Physical's always good. Physical's always good to have. I'm pretty sure just basically anything, their basic attack just does physical, so it's a pretty good resistance to max out if you feel like you're a little bit too squishy. But that's that on crafting. Hopefully that helps.